Welcome back to 4th Age Guides. In this video, we are looking at the campaign prospects for the Principality of Far Harad. This is a faction that's a little bit hard to see here given the color scheme, but Far Harad occupies the southern border of the map of the 4th Age Dominion of Men. This is right along the southern border of the Empire of Harad, which you can see here occupies much larger territory and wealthier territory, as it turns out. And they also almost share a border with Khand. There are just a couple of provinces, rebel provinces in between. On one way of looking at things, Far Harad benefits from being a corner faction, but realistically they actually don't. There's not a lot of benefit here because of the vast amount of border space you have to cover. So that is one of the factors, probably the major one, that contributes to them being considered a laughing at live dragons difficulty faction for the purposes of this mod. Of course, we recommend that you play on decidedly Tookish campaign difficulty and bull roaring battles for the best sort of experience. So let's jump into the campaign starting position and see what awaits you if you want to take on this challenge. So the challenges are strategic in nature, but they're not necessarily to do with the units. I recently did a battle guide video for Far Harad, and in that I made the case that the units are potentially extremely powerful. This faction has very ready access to fear-causing units. It does have access to some excellent mercenaries as well. And so because of those things, because of the strong ranged and cavalry options and some interesting infantry options, you can do well in the battles as Far Harad. The challenge is dealing with the campaign problems. So let's see here what we have. Our capital, first off, is Athenkaris. This is in the far east of the realm. This is right on the corner of the map. And we have two other settlements, Anorlith a little bit to the west, and Adabara as in the borderlands, the Far Harad borderlands. All of these settlements do, in fact, border with the Empire of Harad. And so the challenge becomes apparent here, especially when you look at the move allowance for your units. You're not able to reinforce within a single turn for any of your settlements. It's going to take 2 or 3 turns to get in between them. So you have to start thinking immediately about how you're going to get reinforcements and what you're going to do to maintain what you have and try to expand. You are blessed with a few agents, though. You have actually 2 scouts. These are spies. We renamed them scouts for the purposes of the mod. We have one on the east and one over here in the western border. These guys are very handy just to send them out early on to get a sense of what is coming, and you will definitely see Harad sending stacks to you very soon. They've got some settlements to the north, settlements to the west. Your other scout is going to be useful just to uncover the settlements that are to your north in this eastern part of your realm. These are rebel settlements. It's important to uncover these because once you do that, you can right-click around where the settlement is, and you can see who owns it by looking at the ground. So it says Wilderness, Khandian Drylands, and even though I'm not there, I can tell that this is held by rebels. Now, if I don't have a scout over here, or if I have no way to see who actually owns this settlement, I can still come back and check, and the map, although the display of the city will not change. If, say, Khand comes down and conquers it, I can still do this right-click thing and sort of see who owns it. So it's handy to uncover these settlements just to keep tabs on things. And then I would also send this spy over into the west to uncover some of these settlements. Now, you do have a rogue. This is what we call assassins in the mod. However, he's not anything special, unfortunately. I kind of use him as a cheap scout. You've got him for free, so may as well use him. I send him up here and try to uncover the settlement of Lost Leyden. So let me get rid of the fog of war here briefly. So Lost Leyden is this province, actually. The settlement is Parchareb. And you want to take a look at that early in the campaign because how things unfold very much depends on what happens with these rebel settlements. Now, you may think it's your job to deal with the rebel settlements at first. You began not at war with anybody except for the rebels. And so you may think, okay, well, I'm not at war with Harad. Let's trade with them, I guess, or even ally with them, and then we'll attack these rebel settlements because they're the ones that are adjacent to me. That would be a mistake, I think. What you want to do early is think about how you're going to deal with this incredible threat of the Empire of Harad just along your border, especially given the fact that you have a settlement here with no walls and not even the option to build walls. What you'll have to do first for Adabera, in order for it not to be attacked immediately without even a siege, is build the minor province building, which is what allows you to build this tier of buildings, including just a regular wooden palisade. So this is right on the borderlands, right on your frontier. And so from turn 1, you're going to have to invest close to 9,000 Mirian of your 40,000 to start. So that's almost a quarter of your income just spent on getting to the point where you can begin to build walls. I would actually do this very quickly because you're going to need your armies out and about in order to prevent the enemy from taking advantage of you, and you're not going to want to keep them holed up here. Other things to keep in mind: presences of chief cities. So chief cities are marked by this blue banner on the map. You have one. It's your starting capital. And there is another one right here, Karenbad, and this is an excellent settlement to take. Like your capital, it begins with a stone wall, which allows you to put archers up there, ranged units, whatever. Just makes it much easier to hold. The enemy can't punch like 3 holes with rams in the walls. And so this is a great one to take. The other advantage of it being just a chief city is that you are not restricted in terms of what you can build there. Every one of your other settlements is going to have to make a decision, whether it's financially focused or military focused. And so let's talk about that really briefly. You do have some resources here that may steer you in one direction or the other eventually. Here in Adabera, you have the incense resource, which is extremely rare. I think there are only 3 on the entire map. You've got 2 of them. Adabera has 1. Athenkaris has the other, and the third is up here around Lug. And that's it for incense on the map. So they are a pretty valuable resource. It's definitely worth focusing on trade in those settlements, I think. And that means that you may want to turn Anorlith into a military settlement. Athenkaris, as a chief city, can build everything. It can build the highest level traders. It can build the highest level military development. So go nuts here anyway. But you may possibly want military development here because you'll be able to get your best troops there. That said, military development perhaps means a little less for Far Harad than it does for some other factions. If we take a look at your military, you only have 3 tiers. Everyone can build the first 2 tiers. Every single city can build up to mustering fields. So it's only the third that requires military development or military specialization. What that means is all you're missing by failing to go for a military policy in terms of units are 2 units, your Southron Champions and your Horsemen of Far Harad. Now, these are very good units. They are valuable in their own ways. Probably the Horsemen of Far Harad is more generally useful than the Southron Champions, but these guys are quite useful, but they take some getting used to, as we mentioned in the battle video. So on one level, you may not find it really necessary to go with military development or military policy, even in Anorlith. Perhaps you'll be fine with just getting the mustering fields, because this, honestly, there's a huge jump from your Tier 1 military development, where you can only get your Desert Footmen and Southron Skirmishers, to Tier 2, where you all of a sudden get the incredibly useful archers, which you're going to want to train like mad, and Harried Wraith Riders, which are quite good as well. They're not as good on the charge as those Tier 3 riders, but some of these units, coupled with your General's Bodyguard, which is a very strong cav unit, are going to be excellent anyway. So an argument might be made that military development or military policy is not as necessary for Far Harad as it might be for other factions. If then we turn from resources to other types of things that you will find, let's talk mercenaries. Right on the first turn, you're going to find mercenary sworting skirmishers right outside your settlements, and I buy these up whenever they are available. They are indeed essentially a mercenary version of the Southron skirmishers that you yourself can train. and you start with some of them in your own armies, you can see that these guys are cheaper in terms of upkeep, but I still recommend grabbing these guys simply because they add some numbers. They are effective against armor in terms of their javelins. They frighten the nearby enemy infantry. They have a combat bonus in deserts. They have a higher speed. I think they're taller than other Manish units, and so as a result, they tend to move faster on the battle map. So they're really a great buy, and yeah, 120 upkeep is higher than your native troops, but you may as well get them while you can, and then allow that mercenary pool to refresh so that you can continue to buy them as you need them. Early on, these guys and the Southron skirmishers that you can train are going to be your lifeblood in a lot of ways, along with those archers that you can also train. So early moves, if you're not going to go for these rebel settlements here, what do you go for? Well, I suppose we can look at our victory conditions to give us a bit of a guide here, and you'll see that they are quite open-ended. You have to hold 30 provinces, including your homelands, and a Karn, which is the one marked with a sword here. That's the only one you don't start with, and this is the capital of Khand. So that means that you are sort of pushed into war with Khand, or at least war with whoever ultimately owns this settlement. Now, in practice, it's going to be Khand, almost certainly, because in the games, at least that I have seen, it takes a very long time typically for, let's say, Rune, or more frequently Harad, to force out Khand of their capital. And if they do that when you're playing Far Harad, it's probably going to be after you've been eliminated, because there's no way the AI-controlled Harad is going to ignore you on its southern border and just march up into Khand and start taking this territory. It's very likely that on turn 2 or 3 or 4, you are going to be attacked. So what can you do there? Well, instead of going for Khand, you have to focus on Harad early. So to that end, I like to take out, cruise around my capital and my other settlements and take a look at the traits of my generals. Often you'll find that they're not spectacular governors, and so that just means they'll be field commanders. So you bring them out, and you grab everything that that isn't a footman, essentially, and you leave a single garrison unit there. And then I tend to march these guys up in the vicinity of Karasagar, or at least that's the way I'm going to aim them. And meanwhile, I will set up training for some red sand archers, and you may as well queue up like 4 of these guys anyway, because you want enough to sort of hold the walls. In your other settlement, Anorlith, you start with your faction heir here. Your faction leader is in your capital. But the heir here, actually, he's, of course, on the guide video, I've tried 2 different campaigns, and both of these guys are inept. But on the guide video, where I'm not really playing the campaign, they're inspired governor and expert commander. Okay, so the traits are random. So as you will see, take what you're given. Now, I would be tempted to leave this guy potentially as a governor, but honestly, I think it's more important that you get them out in the field and sort of pushing the enemy. So I'd bring him out here and similarly start training. Now, if you're ever in this situation, and you will be very much in the early game, where you have your tier 1 military building built, and so all you can build in terms of units are desert footmen and Southron skirmishers, I would almost always go with the skirmishers and queue up a few of these guys to sort of augment your forces as needed. The real challenge, of course, is Adabara, and so you've got to just start building towards walls here. And usually there's not much else you can do. A lot of times you'll want to take this governor out of the settlement to make a bit of money. If it's really a problem, you can just leave him like that, and your settlement will make more money if he's bringing it down in terms of income, and he can still reinforce in case you're attacked. But what you need to do is get your agents out and around, and one of the most important things you want to track is this guy up here. Tanari is a nobleman of the Empire of Harad, and in his stack, he has Mumakil. He has the unit of Mumakil that Harad begins with. So your fate, to a great degree, will hinge on which way this guy goes. Now, 9 times out of 10, he's going to disappear into the east, into the fog of war, and he's going to go after Parchereb. This is the only rebel settlement that abuts the Empire of Harad, and so typically the AI from the beginning of the campaign is going to prioritize those rebel settlements. So Tanari and his Mumikil and the rest of his army are going to head over here to try to take Parchereb most of the time. That's good for you because it means you won't have to worry about him. So before I attack Harad, I will try to train a few troops, recruit some mercenaries, generally get my armies into position, but not trespassing, trying not to make it too obvious until I see him besieging Parchereb and ideally taking it. Then I feel like at that point he's lost some men in the siege. A lot of times the AI will leave the family member in the town and take out the army, meaning that you're fighting an army of Mumikil potentially with no general leading it, just a captain, and that makes things much easier. So you want to watch him, and as we discussed in the battle video for Far Harad, you want to make sure you've got plenty of these skirmishers, plenty of these Southron skirmishers, or the mercenary equivalent for dealing with Mumikil. You want to have at least 4 in an army, especially an army that's going to be facing Mumikil. And honestly, you don't need too many. Just a few throws from those guys is going to bring them down pretty reliably. So make sure you are ready to do that. The challenge, of course, is that the elephants may appear as part of a large stack. And so if you don't have a large stack to meet it, it's going to be very difficult. Now, 9 times out of 10, that is what's going to happen with Tanari. 1 time out of 10, though, they're going to head straight for you. So they're going to come down, and before you can even get to walls, you're going to be defending against Mumikil. So to that end, yeah, train up your Southron skirmishers and get ready. A lot of times also what will happen diplomatically is that you will find Harad getting itself into a bit of trouble with Harandor, who is your ally, your only ally, and a military access ally at that. Not that it will matter too much, but a lot of times Harandor will scrape together some forces and go after this settlement here, So Harandor, of course, is this faction, starting with these 5 settlements. Sometimes they'll go after sometimes they will go and attack Adunabar at Emin Arnen. And it's better, I think, if Harandor comes down here, because then you two can work on weakening Harad together, ideally. Diplomatically, though, a lot of times before too much happens, before you can feel strong enough to take on Harad within the first couple or 3 turns, you will be approached by a diplomat from Harad asking for trade. So one of the things you can do here is counter-offer for a settlement. And you're not going to get it without paying some money, but you can counter-offer and ask for Karanbad in exchange for trade rights, and usually they'll come back and demand that you pay them like 9,000 Mirian for 3 turns, and I think I've gotten it down to something like 6,000 for 2 turns, but it doesn't matter because they're going to betray you and attack you like almost immediately, so it's likely that you're not going to have to pay any of that, or at least the entire tribute. And it's probably worth it anyway. You get the settlement if you take it diplomatically. You get a bunch of essentially peasant garrison types, and you also get some local mercenaries. Recently when I did this, I found myself with 3 of the Southron Spear mercenary units, and there may be some up here right now. We can just take a look. Nope, they're not in the pool yet. Southron Spear mercenaries are very similar to your Southron Spears, which you can train immediately right out of here. They're fairly expensive, but they're better than nothing, so it's kind of nice to have the bodies. But in any case, taking Karanbad is awesome because diplomatically you don't have to lose any troops. You do lose some money, but then you can destroy the buildings that you don't need and start building your own dominion there. And you can be in a pretty good position with a walled settlement. Just make sure you've got the archers to man it. At that point, things get pretty fluid. It's hard to tell what's going to happen. What's certain is that Harad is going to produce a ton of units over here, and they're going to send them east. If Harandor is coming down, I would stay away from As you'll notice, is the only settlement that borders Harandor. And so if you take it, so there's no other fords or bridges here, right? If you take the only way Harandor can expand to the south is by taking this first. They're not going to trespass, right? Or they're not going to just use the military access agreement even. They're very likely to take this settlement even if you had it. So in an early campaign, which I'll show you in a moment here, one of the things I did was I got a little greedy with the diplomacy, and I asked for both Karanbad and and I got them. I had to pay some money, I think 5,000 something, for one turn before Harad decided that was a terrible idea and they attacked me. But I was able to hold both of these settlements. And I was even able to expand over here. And then Harandor came in. They got sick of me winning in the south. So let's take actually a look at that campaign. We've got the bad campaign here. This is from, I think, summer of 365. Yes, it is. And so I am about closing in on 40 turns, I guess it is. 56, 65. No, I guess more like 20. And so here's where we are. This is not an ideal situation, as you can tell. It looks like I have a decent amount of territory. I've maintained my homelands. I have expanded to Caranbad and and I also went west to take Akas and Annabon early. Now, the reason I did this is because of something I mentioned in the battle guide video. This is a settlement with a pre-built Mumakil training grounds. So Harad starts with this already built right here in Akas Annabon. This allows them to train Mumakil. If you capture it, it allows you to train your own Mumakil. So I knew this was here. And I wanted to get it and hopefully start training Mumakil. Now, realistically, my economy is not in a position to support it. It wasn't even before I started this. As you can tell, my profits are pitiful, 619 per turn. I've only got under 4,000 in the bank. So this is not a good situation. What happened here is like a classic case of overexpansion. I got very greedy with the early settlements. I got them through diplomacy and then expanded into the west here, trying desperately to shut down Harad. But it didn't take long for Harad to send armies down here. Khand took this settlement right to my north, and as soon as we shared a border, they attacked me. So I now had to keep an army around here to defend from both of these factions. Wasn't strong enough to head up here. And here's the Mumakil army. You can't see it right now, but I get a little closer. And there they are, completely untouched, full-strength unit of Mumakil and some other very dangerous troops. And they are aimed right here at Anorlith, just a couple of turns away, which has very little to stop them. So I'm desperately training troops. This is not going well. Although I have bisected Harad, I'm not in a strong enough position. I have to basically fight like a 2 or 3 front war, depending on how you look at it, because here comes Harandor, right? So I blocked them from expanding in the south by taking for myself, and they betrayed me to get it for their own. They, meanwhile, had made a peace with Adunabar. They're allied with Rohan. So although Harandor made an early push north, they were blocked, and so then they had nowhere else to go, and I was a much weaker target. So here they've got a couple of large stacks with some decent units, and this is something, you know, even these Harandor footmen are stronger than my low-tier stuff. So not going to go well. So don't overexpand, at least in that way. Let's take a look at a better start, or a better first 20 turns. So this is the same exact time, summer of 365. And here I did things a little bit differently, a little more cautiously. And so I think that has made a big difference in how the campaign is going to proceed. So here you can see I've expanded more in the eastern theater rather than in the western theater. I did take Caranbad early through diplomacy again. Harad approached me with a request for trade rights. I countered with a demand for Caranbad, and we haggled back and forth over money. I think it came to something like 6,000 something for 2 turns. And as soon as that happened, they attacked me here. Now, this was the campaign where their Mumakil came straight down. And so I was barely able to hold that army off. I had no walls yet, but I was able to hold it off because I had been training Southron skirmishers. And so at this point, I've got some troops to somewhat hold off any attack of Caranbad, and I've got a full stack over here. The problem in this campaign has actually been Harad's assassin. They've got some absolutely monstrously skilled rogues running around, and so they have been doing things like destroying my buildings. Here's the market too. It's also taken a hit. They destroyed a building here, meaning that I couldn't train anything out of Anorlith for a little while, and they have assassinated 2 of my family members. Now, honestly, these were not fantastic family members anyway, but it certainly does make it harder because those generals give you movement points, they give you morale buffs, they're just all around kind of good to have, even if their traits are not that good. They allow you to recruit mercenaries and so on. So that has been a challenge, but eventually those assassins will die or potentially get caught by maybe my security measures potentially, and then I won't have to worry about that anymore. So I feel like I'm in a better position. Also, by not taking that allowed Harandor to come down early, and they actually helped me out. So I noticed with some alarm that as a Haradrian army was approaching Carenbad from the east, a Harandor army was trespassing on my territory from the west. And I thought, oh, here we go again. Harandor is going to betray me. But in fact, what they apparently did was attacked Harad and drove them off and then went back to their own land. So I'm thinking I'm going to leave a channel for Harandor to expand against Harad. I don't want to take this, even though this is Akas Anabon, this is the settlement where I can or could eventually train Mumakil. It's not worth it at this point to take it and go to war with Harandor. What my next move will be, if anything in the west, is going to be actually over here, and if I'm feeling particularly cheeky, I may head for Umbar itself. Let's take a look at the fog of war here. What we're going to see, again, is that Harad is training, but they're not doing quite as well as they were before. They've got a full stack here, but thanks to Harandor, they've been splitting up their attention, so they're no longer focused just on me. And what that means is if I eventually get a general who's not going to get assassinated en route, I could get an army here and drive deep into the west as long as I have enough forces around here to sort of stave off any Haradrian attack, draw them after me, and try to trash some of these settlements and maybe even take and hold Umbar City, which tends to be lightly held. If you can get past, see where all their stacks are concentrated, it's on those border settlements. The AI does a less good job of defending its interior, or what it perceives to be its interior, and so you just you pass them by. Of course, that does run the risk that they're going to do the same to you, but that's where you have to take your chances. Now, in the eastern half, instead of ignoring these settlements and focusing more exclusively on the middle of Harad's realm, I went pretty early because I noticed that the Mumakil stack did not go after Parshureb this time. So I headed up for Karas Agar, and then, of course, Khand, we shared a border. They attacked me, but I was able to counterattack and sort of mess them up. So I've taken 2 provinces off them so far. This one, which I just essentially did a raid. I took it, I destroyed everything that could be destroyed, including the trader, got out of there and left a trashed unit of horse archer mercenaries, just 7 men there, just so it wouldn't, just so they couldn't walk in and take it, thinking that, well, maybe if they don't attack, what I could do is just let it rebel to the rebel faction. So what I would probably do next here is see about saving this settlement, actually. Not for me, but for the rebels. So what I want to do is I want to see this rebel, and then potentially I can get a peace with Khand and make them pay for it, because we will no longer share a land border. As you can see in this version, Khand has been slow to expand to their south. So that is actually very good news for me, and it means that they're less strong, and if they continue to cause problems, I can just head into their homelands. So this leaves me in a much better position. I still need to keep training troops down south because I need to send some of these guys to join my main army up here. And as you can see, at this point, my main army is a lot of ranged units and a lot of mercenaries. So that's another advantage of heading north into Khand. You'll find these very nice mercenary step outriders, which gives you that much more mobility and ranged power. As well as some more heavy-hitting stuff, like the Variag mercenaries and Dragon Shield riders. So in any case, do this. Don't get greedy. Don't head toward the river too quickly, but do attack Harad soon. Try to take them out entirely. And if you end up facing Khand over a long border, don't stress out about it too much as long as you have plenty of archers. Khand is a relatively easy faction to face in the battlefield. They tend to be lightly armored, and if you have a lot of even foot archers like this, you should be all set. So I hope this has been helpful and you consider giving Far Harad a try. They are a very difficult faction indeed, but it is that much more rewarding when you start to make gains against the AI. Probably my future developments here, as I said, would be to head towards the coast. Hopefully some of these larger stacks will get cleared out. Maybe I'll trash some settlements on the way and just let rebels take them. But once you feel secure, you can really lock down the entire south of the map. You've got a very nice defensible border here. And even in Akarn and Moldin are kind of like linchpins. So you can have a nice defensive border once you get there, but it is something of a long road. So thank you once again for watching, and I hope you'll join me in the next one. Take care, everybody.